Hi everyone, and welcome to Good Foods Q&A live today. I'm going to be talking to my colleague Miriam Nice, and our subject for today is cooking fails, because that's something that we all suffer from every now and then. And actually, I'm slightly minded that I've left something in the oven right now. So perhaps I'll be going through a live cooking fail myself before we've ended this Q&A. I'm just waiting for Miriam to join me now, but do send me any questions and we will try and answer everything we can. Particularly if you've got problems or anything, maybe something just doesn't work out every time you make it. I know I have a massive problem with making certain cakes. For some reason, I manage to, I don't know, they sink in the middle or I manage to burn the edges. And yeah, happens to all of them. So do send us any questions you want. And hopefully, I think Miriam is going to be joining us any minute. So at the moment I'm making a lot of bread, and it's one of the things that I seem to Hello Miriam.
Hi.
I was just saying I'm making a lot of bread at the moment. It's something that seems to be a bit unpredictable, slightly depending on the weather, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, so really massively nice loaf last week. This week I made a pancake, a very stiff pancake as well.
Sourdough or
No, it was just a normal loaf of bread. I think I overproved it and it just went, yeah. Anyway.
So hard. I definitely get that wrong. I was saying to you earlier, that's one of the things that I often fail at, is because I'm not very patient, so I won't let it prove for long enough, and then it's a bit gluey or chewy. I go the other way.
Oh yeah, no, I'm a kind of like, I can take a bit longer. Okay, so the first question that comes in is, my cookies always go flat. What can I do to stop this? So it sounds possibly as if your oven's running a bit cold, because if the mixture for your cookie goes in the oven and it's not hot enough, it kind of doesn't set the dough properly, and it'll just gradually melt and spread out into a puddle. So the first thing you can do really is to check that your oven is the temperature you think it is. You can buy an oven thermometer, but if it's happening every time, maybe just try turning up by 10 degrees and cooking like 1 or 2 cookies just to make sure. Maybe they'll work like that. But that, yes.
Cooking them from frozen is quite good. Mm-hmm. So make them into the cookie dough into little balls and freeze those, and then you've got cookies whenever, but they tend to bake quite nicely from frozen, and you get that little dome in the middle.
Oh yeah, that works very well as well. Okay, so here's another question. How do you get the coffee flavour into a coffee and walnut cake? I add a couple of teaspoons of instant coffee into the cake and icing, but only the icing tastes like coffee. Yeah, it actually is one of those flavours that's really hard to add, isn't it? I make really strong liquid coffee, and add that to the cake as a liquid element, but not very much of it. You just need a couple of tablespoons, and that seems to work quite well because the flavour's kind of released. I think if you add it as a powder, that doesn't necessarily always happen, whereas when you beat it into the icing, the flavour does get released. Do you make coffee cake?
I do, and you can also, often I use espresso through it, same thing. But you can also make a bit of a syrup to put on, and especially if you've made the cake the day before or something, and then you're going to put it together, you can make a sort of syrup with quite a lot of coffee in there, and then just sprinkle a little bit of that over the top, and that adds a bit of extra flavour to the cake.
Yeah, makes it a bit tiramisu-y as well. That's always good. There's a question coming about how can you fix it when your food's too salty. Oh, that's a really tricky one. It's one of the hardest flavors to actually get rid of.
It depends what it is as well.
I know. So if you've made a stew or something, then you basically need to add another ingredient that will absorb it, like potatoes, or stir some rice in or something like that. With other things, you basically just need to dilute the salt out, don't you? It can be really tricky. I'm afraid.
Just anything else that you're serving with it, just don't season. So just like don't season the rice if you're having that with it. But yeah, it's tricky.
I tend to actually not put that much salt in food, and just add salt. I think that's probably to do with having brought up a child. When you're cooking for children as well, you tend not to put salt into the food, and everyone just puts their own salt on it. So it does, a lot of stuff does taste better if you put the salt in at the beginning. Okay, where's the best place to put your bread dough to let it rise? Where do you rise your bread, Miriam?
Well, our kitchen is actually quite sort of, it's not very drafty, it's quite sort of stuffy and but it's got a little window in it. So it seems to sit really well in there. Because often if you put it, I don't know, I find if I put it right near a window, it's too much air.
Yeah.
It's too cold for it. But I have definitely been known sort of in the winter when the temperature's fluctuating to just move it around the flat. So have it in the living room for a bit and then if the heating goes off somewhere else. So yeah, just moving it around.
Yeah, yes, consistency can be quite difficult. I tend to first rise it just out in the kitchen, and then if I want the bread fresh in the morning, I do the second rise in the fridge overnight. So it's really nice and slow, but it is really consistent. In the winter, I'll tell you what, I've got one of those electric clothes airer things. Um, which, which if you've got clothes on it and you put a sheet over the top or something and you just balance the bowl on top, that seems to really help. But yeah, you have to. But they're that the air's sort of kind of all around it. And actually, I've noticed that some microwaves actually have a bread proving function. But I have, to be honest, I've never tried it. Never tried it. Yeah, but basically, a slower rise is better than a really fast rise. So don't worry too much if your bread's rising really slowly. What else have we got? Let's have a look. Cake rises, but when it comes out, it becomes flat. Not cooked through, I would say. It sets, the basically the structure around the air, all the flour and sugar and egg has to set around the air in order to keep it up. So if it's sinking, then it hasn't cooked through enough to set. Either that or it's a really duff recipe, but you haven't said whether that happens to all your cakes or just this one particular cake.
Yeah, and I always remember, I think Cassie always used to say, like, leave the cake in for 20 minutes, like whatever cake it is, just don't open the door for 20 minutes. And that's usually a really good trick before you start testing it with skewers and checking that it's the skewers coming out clean. Just don't open the door for 20 minutes. And that's really, really handy. But if you can use it up as well. You can make a trifle or a tiramisu if it's not quite the right shape you want. You can, don't put it in the bin if it's still.
When I was a child, I lived somewhere where we didn't have proper ovens. And so all the cakes came out with a dip in the middle. All my birthday cakes when I was little were made into nests because they were raised at the top.
Perfect. Yeah,
They're all decorated like nests.
Cut a little bit out and decorate it like a bundt cake, and just no one will know. Yeah, great.
Okay, someone's got two questions. One, if my dough still sticks when I flour my surface, should I also oil the surface? It depends on your bread dough, actually. Some definitely work better if you oil your surface. Some bread doughs, for example, with a sourdough, some of them you don't even necessarily need to shape it on a surface, and you just need to make sure you've got wet hands. So I actually have a kind of non-stick mat. It's like I don't know what it's made of, but it's came from a very large furniture shop, and is kind of plasticky. And I find that if I put a very thin stick to just oil my hands, and it's better than adding lots of flour. And the second question: why does the batter curdle for some Victoria sponges, and how do I avoid this? That's when you add the egg to the butter and sugar, and it's basically just means there's the fat won't mix in and it separates out. So if you add a tablespoon or two of flour when you add the egg, then that should stop that happening.
But also, if you're getting a raising agent in there anyway, like if it's not just relying on that aeration, like if you've got baking powder in there or if it's self-raising, you don't have to worry about that too much anyway. So sometimes mixture curdles, and if it's to bake it, and it'll be fine. Don't worry.
Yeah. As soon as the flour goes in, you'll be fine. Oh, this is a good one. What is the difference with scones with eggs against what I know is an actual scone? Do you put eggs in your scones? I don't put eggs in my scones.
I put eggs as a glaze on the top, but not in the mixture.
Yeah.
So I've done like a wash on the top, but that's it. Only when I feel fancy.
Yeah.
Just put milk on.
I want to put flour on. I think you're going to need to tell us which recipe the eggs are going in. How to make a light crumbly cake. Mine is always dense. That might be the recipe, to be honest. Some recipes are denser than others. The ones with yogurt or ground almonds or a bit more like a pound cake are denser recipes anyway. You need a kind of a cake recipe that you whisk at the beginning. You cream the butter and sugar together and you really whisk the egg in to make a light cake. I have that or lots of raising agent, but that doesn't always taste great. Sourdough. Mine rises nicely in the banister, and then when I turn it onto the baking sheet, it sort of splurges and doesn't hold its nice shape. What are you doing? What am I doing wrong? You're not doing anything wrong. That's what it does. If you look on the BBC Good Food website at the white sourdough recipe, you'll see a method for cooking the sourdough in a cast iron casserole dish. And if you do that, your sourdough will hold its shape because the casserole dish sort of gives it some shape at the bottom and also helps it rise up. And yeah, you get a really nice looking loaf. If you haven't got a cast iron casserole dish, then you can tip it into a bread tin and cook it like that. But basically, you want something to help it keep its shape in. Yeah. And the white sourdough recipe also tells you a bit about shaping within it as well. Yeah, mine does that too.
For like some no knead breads as well, because again they're quite loose, so putting in something that gives it the shape. So
yeah,
good.
Oh, how are you with gluten-free? What things do you need to consider when making a gluten-free cake? Is it just the flour that needs replacing with gluten-free flour? Some of them you can just replace like for like if you've got a good gluten-free flour. Some of them don't work quite so well. I've just been trying to make a recipe for gluten-free scones and I'm failing a bit dismally, but then I've worked out that if you put egg into it, it improves it a lot. So actually with a cake, you tend to have those other improvers in there already, don't you? So yeah, you should be all right.
It depends. It really depends on the recipe. Like sometimes if it's cakes and stuff, like there's some recipes that use vegetables, so like carrot cakes and things like that. Be quite good because they're giving you a bit more structure. Where you're not relying on the flour quite so much if it's not going to work in the same way.
And xanthan gum also helps, which you should be able to buy that in markets, or you can definitely order it online. But that also helps improve texture as well. Oh dear, someone's got one with my oven burns everything. What do I do? I think you probably need to buy an oven thermometer and test your oven because it might just be running really, really hot, and you just need to use a lower temperature. Also, if you're using it on fan, if you're looking at a recipe and it's got an oven temperature and it doesn't specify fan or not fan, and your oven is a fan oven, then you need to turn it down by 20 degrees anyway, and that should help.
Ours sort of does the same thing, but we've got a gas oven and it seems to cook very well in one sort of strip. So I'm constantly moving things around. So you do have to get, all ovens have got their quirks, I think you have to get used to.
I know. Oh, sometimes I make deep cakes, but often it ends up raw on the outside, raw on the inside, burnt on the outside. Am I cooking it on too high? You could be. It depends. Are you changing a recipe so that you're making it in a deep cake tin, whereas it's meant to be made into sandwich tins? In which case, yeah, you might need to change the oven temperature to get it to cook through properly. Either that or the temperature's too high, and that's why it's burning on the outside. Difficult to tell. I don't know what the answer to this one is, but it's why do my eggs wander across my pan instead of being? Oh, I think what you mean is they spread out rather than being neat fried eggs. Yes,
not perhaps.
Yes,
yeah. Oh, you can just sort of flip it. I've had that before. You fry the eggs and a little bit kind of trails across the pan. But if you're quick enough and you get the spatula, you can just sort of fold it in and keep it neat, and that's fine. Put it in a sandwich. I want to know.
Oh no! If you're being really pedantic and you've got a round cutter, you can oil the cutter and put it down on the pan, and then put the egg into that in the cutter, and then it'll come out like one of those neat little round circles.
Do you oil it though? Because if you don't oil it,
it won't come out. Yeah.
You'll just be there with the cake cutter.
Someone says they can't get paella rice. Can I use risotto rice instead? I would. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's still a short grain rice, so that should be fine. What's the best way to cook sausages? Mine always burn because I'm scared they'll be undercooked. There's actually a trick if you're really worried about sausages being undercooked, in that you simmer them in water first.
Yes.
And make sure, yeah.
Especially for like barbecues, that changed. I mean, I don't barbecue at the moment because we live in a flat, but when we used to barbecue, it's just changed everything, because you said to simmer them in water for like 8 minutes, and then you put them on skewers and barbecue them after that, and then they're cooked.
Yeah,
it's so good.
The other thing also I find, if you simmer sausages first, is quite a lot of the fat gets released, and then you don't get that kind of, the fat doesn't burn the outside as much. But yeah, you basically start the cooking off in the water, and then drain them and put them in the oven or the pan or the frying pan or on the barbecue or whatever, and that really helps them cook through, and you don't have to be worried.
Well, they were actually asking about barbecue. What's the top tips for barbecue? All my food ends up getting incinerated. Oh no, barbecue.
Well, I don't know whether it's a coal barbecue or a gas barbecue, but it sounds like you're cooking things on direct heat. So there's two ways of using a barbecue. There's direct heat and indirect heat. So for direct heat, that's when you're going to cook something really quickly, and it's right on top of the coals or the flames. And if you leave it too long, it is going to burn. Or there's indirect heat, where you basically cook the food beside the flames or beside the coals, and then you get all the heat, but it's not rising directly up, and it tends not to burn. So if you were cooking, I don't know, a big lump of meat, for example, or you're trying to cook a whole chicken on a barbecue, you'd put the coals all the way around the outside of the chicken, so the heat was coming onto the chicken, but not straight underneath it and burning. And it's the same with anything else. If you put the coals on either side or the gas on either side, and put what you're trying to cook in the middle, as long as it's really, really, the barbecue's up to heat, then it will cook through, and it shouldn't incinerate. But you might need to move things around a bit to make sure that they're all cooking evenly. Yeah, and also if you are using coals, make sure that the coals have got to the right stage. You don't want leaping flames, because that will burn everything. And it's the same also, the other reason for indirect heat is then if oil drops down onto the coals, you can get a flare up, and that causes burning too. There's quite a few barbecue guides actually on the BBC Good Food website if you want to have a look. What else have we got? Oh, I've been asked to make a vegan chocolate cake. Oh, my favourite recipe. I have a good sponge recipe, but need a vegan chocolate frosting. If you look on the BBC Good Food website, there's a vegan birthday cake with a really good frosting. Actually, it's a really good cake as well.
That's really nice. Is that the vegan chocolate party tray bake? I think it's called. Yeah.
Yeah, there's also a cake version of it as well. Yeah, there's a really good frosting on there.
Yeah. So
best picnic food that's less likely to go off in this boiling hot weather.
That causes fails. Anything with sort of mayonnaise and stuff can get a bit sort of sweaty, and
Yes, avoid mayonnaise, I'd say. You're probably all right with things like hummus. It doesn't matter too much, and sort of crudité to dip in, or if you're really worried, avoid mayonnaise and avoid meat. I would say, because you just never know. Go more on the vegetable things and the dips, and maybe some flatbreads and things like that, and then I think you're a bit safer.
Like pies and pasties are quite nice. Yeah,
and also more solid things that are cold, because they've come out of the fridge, will stay cold for a lot longer than little things. We've got another flat cake, which is probably the same answer as before. You're not quite cooking it for long enough for it to set properly.
And also, check your raising agent in case it's...
Oh, yeah.
Because sometimes baking powder can kind of just stop working, so after you've kept it for a while. So, yeah.
Yeah, you have to put a pinch in some warm water, and it should just go really madly fizzy. And if it doesn't, I know, I've just tested a whole load of my yeast, and it was all dead.
And that definitely happened to me making bread, and I was like, why is this not doing anything at all? Yeah, it's just the yeast was dead.
What sweet recipe can be cooked on a barbecue? What do you cook on barbecues?
Well, I can't barbecue
at the moment. No,
I did. I got strawberries on the barbecue. I think they're really nice, and bananas are pretty pretty obvious ones.
Yeah.
Strawberries are nice. And I once made like a really nice fresh sort of salsa with cucumber and stuff in it, which was really, really nice. Yeah, really, really tasty. And mint. So, yeah, it's lovely.
Oh, I know what's really good. But pineapple's really nice. Really nice
Yes.
on the barbecue.
With some like black pepper as well. I know it's like slightly more savoury, but it's just really, really good.
If you cook sweet stuff on the barbecue, just so you know, it does, because the sugar burns so easily, it might get stuck. But also, you know, it keeps all the juices in, and you want the nice juices. What have we got? Why do my scones never turn out buttery and flaky, but hard and dry? What am I doing wrong? So if they're hard and dry, it could be that you're overworking the scone mixture. Scones are one of those things that you really touch as little as possible. So I'm too lazy to even rub my butter into the flour all the time. So what I do is I chill the butter, and then I grate it into the flour, and then I stir it in with a knife blade, and then I just sort of ruffle it through and put the liquid in, bring it all together, and literally just pat it out, and it's barely even stuck together, and then stamp it out and cook it like that. And then for each sort of bit of butter and flour that's interleaved, you get a little flake when it bakes. So yeah, try having a go where you don't sort of squeeze it together as a dough.
I don't even butter. I think I just chop them either into, if you press it into the dough and cut them into just triangles, and then you don't have to re-roll them, so you're not even working them again, or press it into a square and cut them into 9 squares. And then,
so basically, you're not you don't have a dough that looks smooth. You know, it looks kind of a bit rough, and then it's more likely to turn out better. Someone says they're going to start making sourdough for the first time. They have a starter. Any tips? Well, again, it's the white sourdough recipe on the website. It literally takes you through it step by step, and it really works. And we've all made it, haven't we? We've all tried it, and it's a really good method. And it's a method that sorts out the timing quite well, because one of the things with sourdough when you start making it is you can end up thinking, oh my God, I've got to be up at 2 a.m. to cook this because I've got the timings wrong. So this is really helpful in that respect, as in if you follow it through, then you can actually leave it to rise overnight and cook it in the morning, rather than burning the midnight oil waiting for it to go. What we got? What are your top tips for perfect oven chips? Crispy on the outside, soft in the middle. Barney's just done a video, hasn't he, for making oven chips. It's under the Boss the Basics range. If you have a look on the Instagram account, you will find it. Slow cook summer recipes. I assume more of a ratatouille style. Well, ratatouille is a very good slow cook summer recipe. There's also kind of ragouts, aren't there, made with beans and peas and things like that. But you want vegetables that are fairly robust if you want to slow cooker them. So yeah, you are talking tomatoes and aubergines, and you can slow cook courgettes, but they do tend to go a bit soggy. And the same with green beans. In this country, we tend to eat those kind of green vegetables a bit more al dente. But actually, if you go to the to Europe, there's a lot more recipes where they're much more slow cooked through. Green beans and tomatoes and olive oil, a really nice combination.
Yes. Things like that are really nice cold as well. You know, with some crumbled up like feta and lots of herbs. So that can be like a nice salad. Delicious. Oh, I tried to make a baked cheesecake and it was a disaster. Have you got any tips for next time I try?
Oh, I know. I've just used the New York style baked cheesecake off the website. I used it at the weekend. That one works really well. Do you know what? I think it's one of those things that we have quite a few questions about cheesecakes come in, don't we? You must make sure that you're using full fat cream cheese. Soft cheese, as we call it. It really does make a difference. So make sure it's full fat, and also don't overbeat it. I mean, you kind of want to stir, beat the cream cheese a bit to make it nice and smooth, but don't kind of go mad beating it, because that sometimes changes the consistency before you even start to bake it. I don't know if you're when you say disaster, we don't know whether you've got cracks in the top or anything. Again, if you let it times up, if you turn the oven off and open the oven door and then let it cool in the oven, that sometimes helps a lot as well. What else have we got?
It's really great questions about cooking disasters, everyone.
Do we have a recipe on the site for pizza without yeast? Yes, we do. Flatbread pizza, don't we? Yeah. What else have we got? Do you need a stand mixer to make great cakes? No, you just need more time and patience with a hand mixer. And also, a stand mixer is great if you want to do volume. If it's a big cake, then obviously you're going to be able to make a big cake much more easily. If you've only got a little hand mixer, then you might want to split the cake into, and it is a big cake, you might want to split it into 2 sections. But otherwise, no, you don't need a stand mixer. And when I learned to make cakes, I had to make them all by hand first. I wasn't allowed to use the stand mixer until I learned to make them by hand.
We had one of those ones, I don't know if you remember those ones where you sort of, it's got like 2 cogs and you just sort of turn it. It's like a hand crank.
Oh, yeah, that one, yes, yeah.
And then, you know, it would often like just jam like a bike or something. It would just completely lock and you get really annoyed. But yeah, that's what I had to make.
Yeah. I don't know, yeah, rotary whisks.
Yeah.
There, what have we got? Top tips to stop food sticking to the bottom of the tray when roasting cooking in the oven. I've got reusable tray liners.
Yeah. Cooking a little bit longer, maybe sometimes when food sort of sticks, if you just cook it a bit longer, it will come out a little bit later. Or good.
Yeah. But seriously, reusable tray liners are really, really useful. Though having said that, I have just cooked something over the weekend talking about cooking fails, and it was a non-stick pan. I don't know what I did to it, overheated it or something, but all the black from the non-stick pan was stuck on the bottom of what I was cooking. I know. I ate it anyway.
Oh dear.
Right. I think we've come to the end of our questions. Unless anyone's got any more.
Thank you for sharing your cooking disasters with us.
I'm just looking through to make sure we haven't missed any. Oh, someone wanted the right ratio. Try different mixtures for a crustless quiche, but I can't get it right. We've just done a new recipe, haven't we?
Yeah, I
think there's a new recipe. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so if you're looking for lots of support and inspiration, obviously we can't be here 24 hours a day, but if you would like to join the Facebook group, that's BBC Good Food Together, everyone on there is really, really helpful and is great for answering questions. And there tends to be someone there all the time. If you've got cooking photographs, then please with the hashtag them, and we can see what you've been making. And we repost people's pictures all the time. And this week, we're talking, I think, about cookies. And on Thursday, Barney's going to be talking about sourdough. So yeah, do join. And Thursday this week we'll be doing Q&As, and if not, just pop into the Facebook group and they will help you all of the time. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Miriam. Very nice to see you. And we'll see you all soon.
Take care.
Bye. Bye.